The first set of magic methods that we're going to learn about are the ones that Python uses to generate string representations of objects. And we saw a little bit of a peek of this in the prior chapter when we worked on object composition, but we're going to see much more of it now. So let's go ahead and open up the magic stir underscore start file. And you can see that I have my book class defined with some properties, along with a couple of statements to create some book objects. So there are two magic string functions. One is called stir and one is called repr. The stir function is used to provide a user-friendly string description of the object and is usually intended to be displayed to the user. The repr function is used to generate a more developer-facing string that ideally can be used to recreate the object in its current state. It's commonly used for debugging purposes, so it gets used to display a lot of detailed information. So these functions get invoked on an object in a variety of ways. So for example, when you call the print function and pass in the object, or when you use the stir or repr casting functions, these methods will get called. So let's run our code as it currently is before we override these functions. You can see that I'm creating two book objects and then printing them out. So let's go ahead and run this. And so here in the output, you can see that when I print each object, I just get a vague string that identifies the class name and its location in memory. So let's make that a little bit better. Let's go ahead and add the stir function. And you can see that these are double underscore function names, indicating that they are Python magic functions. So when I override the stir function, I get to decide what the string representation looks like. So I'm going to return a formatted string. In this case, it's going to be self.title by, and then it's going to be self.author, and it costs self.price. All right, so now let's rerun the code. Now you can see that when I print these objects out, there's a much nicer string representation of each book object containing their real-time data. All right, so let's go back to the code. Now let's add the repr function, and it's going to return a slightly different string. So this is going to return a formatted string as well, and just a whole bunch of properties. It's going to say title equals self.title, and then author equals, and then I'll just print the author information, and then price. All right, and now let's add a couple of more function calls to convert the book objects to strings by using stir and repr directly. So for the first example, I'm actually going to call the stir function on B1, and then I'll use repr on B2. All right, so let's go ahead and save, and now let's run the code again. All right, so now you can see that when I print the objects or call stir directly, the stir function gets used, and when I call the repr function, that causes my double underscore version of repr to be used instead. So each of these functions is totally optional for you to override, but it's usually a pretty good idea to at least define the repr function for classes that you create in order to make debugging easier.